Ladies and gentlemen, I call the meeting to order. And I also apologize for the delay, and I really hope that you have a long rest, and now you are fit for fight again in the very last end. Could I please invite you to adopt the agenda? Are there any objections? None. The agenda is adopted. Will the Russians say something? Where are they? No? I remind colleagues that nomination for candidates for the election of the committee officer is now closed. And now we have the last supplementary item. It's the draft resolution on the situation in the Middle East and its effect on the OSCE area, and it's called SC13 SI22. And I call on Mrs. Isabel Pozuelo from Spain to introduce the draft resolution. Madam, you have the floor.
Gracias, Presidenta. El objeto de esta propuesta es dar continuidad al debate que tuvimos en la reunión de invierno en Viena sobre el conflicto de Siria y sus consecuencias en todo el área del Mediterráneo y en la región OSCE. La guerra en Siria empezó en marzo de 2011, generando un gravísimo foco de inestabilidad política en toda la región, de consecuencias imprevisibles de continuar la actual escalada de violencia. Las implicaciones en las reuniones con otros países, con Irán, con Irak, con Egipto, con Jordania, con Turquía, significa la ruptura de todos los equilibrios políticos y regionales en la zona. Las amenazas sobre Israel, las repercusiones sobre los países mediterráneos convierten en este conflicto en algo cada vez más urgente de resolver. En segundo lugar, la crisis humanitaria y económica generada en todos los países limítrofes y, por supuesto, en la propia Siria, hacen que la comunidad internacional tenga que actuar de la manera más rotunda. Se calcula que aproximadamente 80.000 personas han muerto en el conflicto de Siria, 4 millones de personas afectadas, 2 millones de desplazados, la mayor parte de ellos dentro del interior de Siria, pero también en el exterior, desplazados internos, pero también en los otros países como Turquía, Egipto, Irak, Líbano, etc. Jordania es uno de los países más afectados por los campamentos de refugiados y por el desplazamiento de personas sirias. Alcanza el máximo de refugiados Jordania con una población estimada de 250.000 personas, lo que desborda la capacidad y los recursos de este Gobierno. Igualmente en Turquía, cuya situación es un problema verdaderamente alarmante e importante, pero al que no me referiré, al ser los propios colegas del país los que van a informarnos y a presentar el debate en el plenario de esta tarde. Esta compleja situación de crisis humanitaria y de ruptura de la paz, inestabilidad en la región, requiere, por un lado, una condena unánime al régimen de Assad y, en segundo lugar, un esfuerzo mayor de todos los países y de la comunidad internacional para hallar una solución dialogada, política y diplomática al conflicto. El apoyo y la ayuda de todos a Turquía, Jordania y Egipto para que puedan gestionar y administrar en nombre de la comunidad internacional el desplazamiento de la población siria a sus países y a los campos de refugiados. La OSCE debe unirse a los esfuerzos multilaterales en estrecha colaboración con Estados Unidos, Rusia, Turquía y la Liga Árabe para ayudar al pueblo sirio a detener este baño de sangre y apoyar las gestiones conjuntas que John Kerry, el secretario de Estado de Estados Unidos, y el ministro de Exteriores ruso, Sergei Lavrov, para convocar una conferencia sobre Siria partiendo de la celebrada en junio del 2012 y la recientemente celebrada en junio de 2013, en aras de encontrar una solución política creíble y efectiva. En este escenario se pone de manifiesto nuevamente lo importante, lo crucial de hallar una paz justa y verdadera también entre palestinos e israelíes, con la coexistencia de los dos Estados por medios pacíficos de negociación y diálogo como única vía para la paz. No voy a referirme más extensamente a la propuesta que hace mi propuesta de resolución sobre Palestina, porque ya tuvimos un debate suficientemente amplio ayer y el tiempo nos exige una limitación para mi intervención. Pero a lo largo de las propuestas de las enmiendas, del debate sobre las enmiendas, probablemente podré hacer alguna referencia sobre ello. Muchas gracias, presidenta.
Thank you very much. And now the debate on the resolution is now open. So I will call Mr. Heiker from Morocco to have the floor. Sir, it's your turn.
Je m'excuse, je voudrais participer à la discussion du deuxième point concernant le Moyen-Orient. Je m'excuse, je voudrais participer à la discussion du deuxième point concernant le Moyen-Orient.
But we are debating it also, so you can continue. It's okay.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Je tiens tout d'abord à vous remercier l'auteur de ce projet ainsi que tous ceux qui donnent de l'importance à la question de la Palestine et des pays de la Méditerranée. J'aimerais juste rappeler qu'on a adopté hier une résolution concernant l'autorité nationale palestinienne à laquelle on a donné un statut de partenariat. Et j'imagine que ce projet est tout à fait compatible avec, et j'imagine aussi que quelques amendements étaient proposés en l'absence de cette résolution. Je trouve que quelques amendements vont dans le sens de compléter cette résolution et la perfectionner, alors que d'autres ne sont pas compatibles avec. Ces derniers, je trouve qu'ils n'ont plus de sens à être abordés à présent, et j'attends vivement qu'ils soient retirés. Merci, Madame.
Thank you. And now I call Mr. Smith from United States.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And first, I want to begin by commending Mrs. Pozuelo for presenting a resolution in the Middle East and the ongoing crisis in Syria. Some estimates put the loss of life at least 93,000 dead and so many wounded. And of course, the IDPs and the refugees are staggering. Matter of fact, the United Nations estimates that half of the population of Syria will be in need of assistance by the end of the year. And they have made an appeal for some $5 billion for 2013. It is the largest appeal they have ever made. So the crisis is of huge, huge proportions. Let me say also that there will be some amendments, as members know, to strike some of the provisions. And I would hope that we would look not to recognize the Palestinian, the Liberation Authority as an organization. It is violative of our own rules as a parliamentary assembly, as well as the OSCE, to recognize a non-state. We hope they get to a status of statehood through a negotiation with the Israelis, but to do it in a way that circumvents the negotiations, I think, would be totally counterproductive. Let me finally say, Madam Chair, that just last week in my committee, a Human Rights Committee of the House of Representatives, I chaired a hearing on the Christians that are seemingly just caught in the middle. But the consensus from the human rights organizations that testified, including the International Human Rights Commission on Religious Freedom, was that Christians are being targeted for extermination by both sides in this fight. And that is a little recognized, and I hope each of us will take that back to our respective parliaments and congresses and speak out about that terrible atrocity. It is a genocide.
Thank you very much. And that concludes the debate on the draft resolution. Okay, 7 amendments have been tabled to the draft resolution. The correct version is numbered SC 13 SI 22 amend. And then I call Mr. Kaflikalis from Cyprus to propose amendment number 1. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. By the proposed amendment, we will wish that a reference be made in the resolution on the Arab Spring in terms of aspirations yet unattained and persisting challenges in direct or indirect connection with this significant development in the Middle East and the North African region. Moreover, we suggest that the word partners be replaced by non-participating states for the purpose of including states of the region, such as Libya, which are not OASC Mediterranean partners for cooperation. Thank you.
Does anyone want to speak against? Spain? No, yeah, yes, and now you, okay, now you have the word, Mrs. Puello.
Sí, Presidenta, realmente no era para oponerme, me parece una excelente enmienda que mejora el texto. Lo que sí haría una sugerencia, si me permite, una enmienda in voce para aclarar un poco más el texto, que significaría no eliminar el término participantes, sino incluir participantes y no participantes. Creo que así se complementa perfectamente el texto y la intención de la ponente y también del enmendante.
Thank you. And now, again, we have an oral amendment. Is there anyone who want to speak against it? Because we have to be unanimous on this. Is there anyone who wants to speak against the oral amendment, I mean? No one? Okay. It's adopted. Thank you. And now, before we go into amendment number 2, I would like to announce that Mr. Onen from Turkey, he has removed his signature from amendment number 2. Mr. Onen from Turkey has removed it. So, amendment number 2. I call Mr. Allison from Canada to propose amendment number 2. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to all my fellow colleagues. To begin with, I would like to thank Ms. Peluso from Spain for raising the important issues here related to comprehensive security of our region. I agree with many of the points she has raised. However, I have some serious concerns about the inclusion of this paragraph, and so my recommendation is to delete paragraph number 8. We all want a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace in the Middle East, where a Palestine state would be living side by side in peace and security with Israel. For it to be sustainable, a peace settlement must ensure Israel's right to live in peace with its neighbors within secure boundaries. It must also lead to the creation of a sovereign, independent, viable, democratic, and territorial continuous Palestinian state. However, it is crucial to underscore that such a comprehensive peace settlement will only be achieved through direct negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians. Unilateral actions by either side undermine our ability to push for a comprehensive peace and serve only to move us further away from the meaningful negotiations between those two parties. Our ultimate goal, a two-state solution for the Middle East, so I encourage you to support this amendment.
Thank you. Does anyone want to speak against? Sweden? Sweden, you have the word.
No, I just needed to ask a question for clarification, because I think we already...
Is it a question of order?
Yes,
Okay.
because I just want to ask whether we already have decided on this matter of the status of Palestinians in the OSCE already. And I just wonder if this is an adequate point to vote about. I mean, I just ask for your clarification.
Just a minute. We don't have the decision yet from the Standing Committee. They have a recommendation, but not a decision. So I think we move on. And now I ask again, does anyone want to speak against? Malta, I think they... Malta, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Rather than speak against, I would like to draw attention to my Canadian colleague and to the rest of the committee that the United Nations General Assembly recently passed Resolution 67/19, which was actually a step forward in recognizing the rights of the Palestinian people for their statehood. I think it's unfair and unjust that the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly takes a step backward or even remains static when the United Nations is actually going forward. I just need to draw this to the attention of the committee. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. And then, Mrs. Pozuelo, what's your opinion?
Sí, mi opinión claramente es de rechazo a esta enmienda. Explicaré brevemente por qué. Considero que el acuerdo que tomó en noviembre Naciones Unidas, en noviembre de 2012, significa un paso hacia adelante importantísimo. Lo manifesté en el debate que tuvimos ayer y creo que la Asamblea Parlamentaria debe tomar la iniciativa política para dar un respaldo más en beneficio de las negociaciones de paz que tienen que terminar de celebrarse y de llegar a éxito entre Israel y Palestina con el impulso de la comunidad internacional. Estoy de acuerdo en la presentación que ha hecho, en parte de la presentación que ha hecho el defensor de la enmienda, en el sentido de lo que creo que todos defendemos, y es que esto necesita una solución rápida, urgente, entre las partes, una negociación dialogada, pacífica, que llegue a la convivencia final entre los dos Estados. Pero creo que la decisión de Naciones Unidas significa un paso importantísimo y el resto de los organismos internacionales debemos seguir apoyando esta línea de trabajo y de cooperación para hallar la paz en el Mediterráneo. Gracias.
Thank you. And now I shall put the amendment number 2 to the vote. Will those in favor of the amendment please raise your voting cards now? Against? Abstentions? It's adopted. Thank you. And now, amendment number 3. I call Mr. Kafkalias from Cyprus to propose the amendment number 3. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Although the proposed amendment preceded the G8 leaders meeting in Northern Ireland, we have wished to see paragraph 13 more concrete regarding the latest development in international efforts towards a political settlement of the Syrian crisis. We deem important that intensified international efforts be welcome as a meaningful step forward. We also deem important to point to the way ahead and to the urgent need to step up efforts in order to achieve the necessary political consensus towards a settlement that will ensure full respect of the sovereignty of Syria and the will of its people. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone want to speak against? No? No one? And Mrs. Pozuelo from Spain, you have the floor, madam.
Sí, la enmienda la acepto. Gracias.
I shall now put amendment number 3 to vote. Will those in favor of amendment number 3 please raise your voting cards now? Against? Abstain? Abstention. Thank you. It's adopted. Then we go on to amendment number 4, and I will call Mr. Kulikov from Cyprus to propose amendment number 4. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. We propose that the high significance of achieving substantial progress regarding the Middle East process be pointed out in the operative part of the resolution. In this context, and in the light of the increasingly uncertain security situation in the region, we deem important to stress the urgent need for peace negotiations to regain momentum towards the settlement of the protracted Israeli-Palestinian conflicts in accordance with international law within the agreed negotiating framework and on the basis of the principles and agreements reached by the parties.
Thank you. Does anyone want to speak against? No one? And then we will listen to Mrs. Puzuela from Spain again. You have the floor, madam.
Sí, Presidenta, acepto la enmienda, me parece excelente.
That's good. Now, I shall now put the amendment number 4 to the vote. Will those in favor of amendment please raise your voting cards now? Against? Abstentions? It's adopted. Thank you. Amendment number 5. I call Mr. Wicker from the United States to propose amendment number 5. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Adoption of this amendment number 5 would be precisely consistent with the adoption of amendment number 2 by Mr. Allison of Canada, which has already been voted on. I think we voted in the affirmative on that amendment and should vote in the affirmative on this amendment for 2 basic reasons. Number 1, the rule of law within the OSCE. Palestine will someday be a state. It is not today a state, and unless we intend to ask OSCE to violate our explicit rules, then this paragraph must fall as the other paragraph fell. Secondly, someday the peace process will succeed. The negotiations will be successful. The government of the Palestinian Authority and Hamas will recognize the right of Israel to exist, and Palestine will become a state. That time has not yet occurred, and so I urge an aye vote on the amendment.
Thank you very much. Does anyone want to speak against this amendment? You want to speak against? Germany,
I want to speak against this amendment because we discussed it all through. Yesterday and today was the first amendment, and I think, okay, we can vote, but the arguments are not valid.
Thank you. And Mrs. Pesuelo, what's your opinion?
Pienso que en ningún momento si rechazáramos esta enmienda y aceptáramos el texto que yo he propuesto, vulneraríamos ninguno de los reglamentos ni de los procedimientos de la Asamblea Parlamentaria de la OCE, como tampoco los vulneró Naciones Unidas cuando decidió el 29 de noviembre de 2012 aceptar y conceder a Palestina la condición, y leo textualmente el Acuerdo de Naciones Unidas, conceder a Palestina la condición de Estado observador no miembro en las Naciones Unidas, sin perjuicio de sus derechos adquiridos, las prerrogativas y las funciones de la Organización de Liberación Palestina, etcétera, etcétera, etcétera. Estos mismos términos son los que yo estoy solicitando con mi propuesta para la Asamblea Parlamentaria de la OCE. Muchas gracias. Por eso rechazo esta enmienda.
Thank you. I shall now put amendment number 5 to the vote. Will those in favor of amendment please raise their voting cards now? Against? Abstentions? It's rejected. Thank you.
Can we have the result?
And now
Can we have the result?
The result is 25 votes for, 27 votes against, and 9 abstentions.
Est-ce que c'est le cas, vraiment le cas? Est-ce que c'est vraiment le résultat? Est-ce que c'est vraiment le résultat?
I mean, that's who we counted, yes.
I propose we can do it again if you like, because this. Why?
I mean, this was who voted. Move on.
Presidenta.
Okay, we move on. They told me we have to move on. Okay. I call the amendment for number 6, and I call Mr. Allison from Canada to propose amendment number 6. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. And what I propose is to replace the phrase "with the government of Libya and Lebanon" so that these states can become Mediterranean partner countries with the government of Libya so that it can become a Mediterranean partner country. And Madam Chair, why I'm suggesting that is that the reference from Lebanon should be removed from this paragraph. Hezbollah forms part of the Lebanese government. In Canada, Hezbollah is listed as a terrorist entity, as it is in other countries around the world. Its goal is the destruction of the State of Israel. In violation of the international laws of war, it has deliberately targeted Israeli citizens for attack. Hezbollah is also taking an active part in the conflict in Syria in support of the Assad regime. So, colleagues, our organization is founded on the basis of cooperation and peaceful settlement of disputes, recommending negotiations with a view to admitting Lebanon to the Mediterranean Partnership will not advance these ends. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Does anyone want to speak against? No one? And what's your opinion, Mrs. Puesuelo? You have the floor.
Opino que esta enmienda es aceptable. Quedaría, por lo tanto, la petición de la incorporación de Libia y excluiríamos la de Líbano. Conforme.
I shall now put amendment number 6 to vote. Will those in favor of the amendment please raise your voting cards now? Against? Rejections? Abstentions? Thank you. It's adopted. And now we go on to amendment number 7, and I call Mr. Wicker from United States to propose amendment number 5.
Madam Chair, I yield I ask consent to yield my time to Mr. Smith, a co-author of the amendment.
Thank you very much, Senator Wicker. And Madam Chair, the United States Secretary of State John Kerry has been involved in intensive efforts to bring the parties, the Israelis and the Palestinians, back to the negotiating table. As part of that effort, the United States has been urging all parties to refrain from unilateral actions that could be perceived as attempting to influence final status issues. Efforts to recognize Palestinian statehood, or as paragraph 18 suggests, adequate stature in the OSCE EPA could have a severe detrimental effect on the diplomatic efforts at this particularly sensitive time. I would also remind my colleagues that to do so would be violative of our own rules of procedures. Part 1 states very explicitly that the composition of the Assembly shall be comprised of members of parliaments from countries which have signed the Helsinki Final Act and the Charter of Paris and the participating in the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. The PNA does not meet any of those tests, and again, I think it'll undermine, and I repeat, undermine our efforts to get both sides back to the negotiating table so a two-party state will emerge.
Thank you very much. Does anyone want to talk against this amendment? Jutta Sapp from Germany, you have the floor, madam.
Thank you. I repeat what I said before. We have voted several times on the same issues, and now again to vote against it is absolutely absurd. I am against this amendment.
Thank you. And Mrs. Pozuelo, what's your opinion?
Gracias, Presidenta. Rechazo esta enmienda por las razones que ya se han manifestado, pero quiero insistir en que, tal como he dicho en mi presentación, apoyamos decididamente los esfuerzos de paz que está haciendo el secretario de Estado de Estados Unidos, John Kerry, pero creo que las consecuencias negativas de aceptar esta propuesta solo las tendrían para una parte, para la parte más débil, y solo tendrían consecuencias positivas para la parte más fuerte, la parte más fuerte de la negociación. No iría en contra de la negociación. Solo quiero terminar este debate, si me permite, Presidenta, que ya es redundante, recordando unas palabras que decía Simón Pérez hace tan solo unas semanas. Simón Pérez, el arquitecto de los acuerdos de Oslo hace algunos años, ya demasiados años, que decía literalmente: no malgasto mi tiempo mirando hacia atrás. Espero que mi momento de mayor orgullo llegue el día de mañana, cuando la paz llegue a mi país. Creo que eso es lo que todos queremos.
Thank you. I shall now put amendment number 7 to the vote. Will those in favor of this amendment please raise your voting cards now? High, please. Against? High again, please. Abstentions? It's adopted. No. And now we will vote for the whole resolution, because this concludes the discussion of amendments. Thank you very much for that. I propose that we now formally move to a vote for the draft resolution. Would those in favor of adopting the draft resolution please raise your cards now? Against? Abstentions? Thank you. It's adopted. And that concludes the supplementary items. And now I would like to give the floor to the Vice Chair of the committee, Mrs. Bradley, to present the follow-up on the last year's declaration. Mrs. Bradley, you have the floor for some minutes.
Can you hear me? Now they're on. Thank you. Dear colleagues, it is again a pleasure to address you on actions taken by the OSCE with respect to resolutions adopted by our committee at our last annual session in Monaco. The report prepared by the International Secretariat considers actions taken in the political security dimension over the past year by the OSCE, its institutions and field presences, and other members of the international community. The report addresses important areas which all deserve thorough coverage, but for the purpose of my talk, I will limit myself to 2 questions. Firstly, conflict resolution. Although the likelihood of imminent and major breakthroughs seems rather limited with respect to the conflicts in Georgia, Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria, we must not lose hope. Yes, progress made is incremental and difficult to see at times. But the mere fact that the affected parties meet to discuss the problems, that the OSCE chairmanship puts protracted conflicts firmly on the agenda, and that we parliamentarians try to help the best we can is important. But I think we also have to ask ourselves if there are any better ways of addressing these conflicts. Is there a risk that our discussions just cement the existing lines of conflict? Are we being sufficiently creative in our approach? Are there unused tools in our toolbox? In the report, you can read about the various follow-up actions since Monaco. Yet, in the end, it boils down to political will. In this regard, I would like to quote from the joint statement made by the President of Russia, the United States and France during the recent G8 meeting in Enniskillen in Northern Ireland. It relates to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, but I think the spirit of the statement is relevant to all protracted conflicts. And I quote, "We reiterate that only a negotiated settlement can lead to peace, stability and recognition, opening opportunities for regional development and cooperation. The use of military force that has already created this current situation of confrontation and instability will not resolve the conflict. A renewal of hostilities would be disastrous for the population of the region, resulting in loss of life, more destruction, additional refugees, and enormous financial costs. We strongly urge the leaders of all sides to recommit to the Helsinki principles, particularly those relating to the non-use of force or the threat of force, territorial integrity and equal rights and self-determination of people." End of quote. And secondly, I will address the cybersecurity. It's not many years ago that very few people had computers. Today we are entirely dependent on them and all kinds of software to be able to carry out our work. It is no exaggeration to say that without functioning ICT infrastructures, core areas of our societies would be in deep trouble. This dependency obviously creates vulnerabilities. Cybersecurity relates to measures taken to protect a computer or computer systems, including the internet, against unauthorized access or attack. It deals with preventative methods to protect information, such as personal information, from being accessed without authorization, stolen, compromised, or attacked. Cybersecurity has many aspects of which the fight against crime and protecting vital infrastructures are important. But so is protecting people's privacy on the internet. Recent revelations by the British newspaper The Guardian and other media on how the National Security Agency of the United States has obtained direct access to the systems of Google, Facebook, Apple and other companies is a reason for concern. Apparently, the agency can directly and unilaterally seize millions of users' online emails, searches, videos, and communications from the company's servers. The full extent of the revelation is not yet known, but I think it's fair to say that they raise huge concerns with respect to people's privacy. I am pleased that our Assembly is addressing cybersecurity, and the Monaco Declaration called for the OSCE to organize an exchange of views and best practices on confidence and security building measures, including in the area of cybersecurity and counter-terrorism. During the last year, there were several OSCE activities related to cybersecurity, especially cybercrime. The Transnational Threats Department of the OSCE Secretariat organized the annual police experts meeting on 20th to 21st of September 2012. The topic was fighting the threat of cybercrime, and the meeting was attended by 100 representatives from OSCE participating states and partners for cooperation. Key issues were improved prevention efforts, the need for rapid exchange of information, building investigation capacity through training, cooperation with the private sector and internet service providers. The Transnational Threats Department will work in close cooperation with OSCE field operations to identify needs for support in capacity building in participating states. Another follow-up action worth mentioning is the supplementary item on cybersecurity from Mrs. Pakosta from Estonia, which we adopted earlier today. Dear colleagues, to get a full picture of follow-up actions on all areas, I encourage you to read the report which has been made available to you. And dear colleagues, this is my last speech in this committee, because this is my last meeting in this assembly. And before I conclude, there is one last thing I would like to say. And I think it's a very important one. It's about women's participation in our assembly. The issue is raised every year, and regrettably, there is not a great deal of progress. The exception is the number of committee officers, where there is now a fair share of women. But I remind you that we have not reached our goal just because all three of us in the leadership of this committee the last year is women. Too many delegations are still dominated by men, and I strongly encourage these delegations to do more to include female MPs. When we reach Helsinki plus 40 in 2 years, I sincerely hope there is more women, both in our assembly and all other OSCE structures. That would really be something to celebrate. We cannot make progress, we cannot make peace and strengthen security if not both men and women are included. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this speech, and the end of it was brilliant, I think. You have to remember all that, what she said. And I really hope that you have a good future and the best wishes from all of us when you are leaving us. We had a pretty good time, I think, yes. So thank you very much. And now we have to move on to the last thing. The only remaining item of business for the committee to conclude is the election of committee officers for the 33rd annual session of the Assembly. And you know, nomination closed 11:30 this morning, and the International Secretariat informs me that the following nominations have been received in the table office. For chair, Mrs. Åsa Lindestam from Sweden. That's me, you know. Yes. And Mr. Markis Vouridouris from Greece. For vice chair, Mr. Vladimir Kulikov, Russian Federation. And Mr. Asayev Guleev from Azerbaijan. And for rapporteur, Mrs. Pia Kauma from Finland. And Mr. Jose Ignacio Sanchez from Spain. And now we will have an election for the position of chair, vice chair, and rapporteur. I will handle this over to the Secretariat to explain the balloting process to delegates. Please, Tina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As just announced, committee members will now vote by secret ballot for the positions of chair, vice chair, and rapporteur. As Åsa also just announced, the two candidates for chair of the committee are Åsa Lindestam from Sweden and Makis Voridis from Greece. We also have 2 candidates for vice chair. Those are Vladimir Kulikov from the Russian Federation, along with Asai Goliev from Azerbaijan. The 2 candidates for rapporteur are Pia Kauma from Finland, along with José Ignacio Sanchez from Spain. Ballot papers have been prepared for the election, and we will be conducting the elections for chair, vice chair, and rapporteur at the same time. There are 3 different ballot papers. The ballot paper for the chair, or for the election of the chair, is a yellow ballot paper. The vice chair ballot paper is green, where the ballot paper for the rapporteur is orange. To vote, please place a cross by the name of your preferred candidate. There will be 3 ballot boxes, 1 for each election, and the boxes will be marked with the same color as the ballot. Please make sure that you cast your vote in the correct ballot box. That makes accounting a lot easier. The candidate with the highest numbers of votes will be elected. In case of a tie, where the 2 candidates have the same number of ballots, lots will be drawn. As tellers, 3 members of the committee have been appointed. That is Ms. Susanne Bradley of Norway, Mr. Thierry Mariani from France, and Ms. Rosa Agnazarova from Kyrgyzstan. The tellers will oversee the conduct of the election and the counting of the votes. And I please ask the tellers to join Kim and the team to the right of the podium. I ask members of the committee
По процедуре.
Yes, but can I please? No. I kindly ask members of the committee to come to the podium with your badge and your voting card. And only members of parliament, that is blue badges along with blue voting cards, will be allowed to be given ballots. You must hand over your voting card in order to get your ballots. So in exchange for your voting card, you need to receive the 3 ballots. The committee will be suspended while the votes are counted, and we will then resume for the results to be announced. The results of the elections will also be announced in the plenary session this afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair.
По процедуре можно?
Yes? Point of order.
Уважаемые председатели, я хочу сделать небольшое заявление по процедуре, а именно, фактически мы будем голосовать за человека, который героизировал убийцу Рамиля Сафарова. Документальное подтверждение этого есть.
This is not fair. You are not talking about persons in my committee so far, because I'm the chair and I'm to decide. And this is not a point of order. So please put down your microphone. I will talk to until you put out your microphone. Can you stop your microphone? Please turn off. Turn off. Thank you. Now we continue with the voting.
for those who have not voted yet, please come forward and cast your vote. We'll keep the ballot open for another 3 to 4 minutes. Last call, anybody who hasn't voted yet, please step forward and do so.
Hello? Hello, all my friends in this room. Hello? Have you voted now? Because we want to start. Are you all ready? No more voting? No more voting? Hello? No more voting? Okay. We are done. And now I declare the election closed. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, I call to order. Do you want to hear the result? Yes, I think you want. And I give the word to Mrs. Bradley from Norway. You have the floor, madam.
Thank you very much. The results of the election. This is the result of the election for the rapporteur of the General Committee on Political Affairs and Security. Mrs. Pia Kauma from Finland got 45 votes. Mr. José Sánchez Amor from Spain got 31 votes. 77 members have voted. There were one spoiled ballot paper, and Mrs. Pia Kauma is accordingly elected rapporteur. Congratulations. Then we have the election for vice chair. And Mr. Vladimir Kulikov from the Russian Federation, he got 33 votes. Mr. Asai Gulayev from Azerbaijan got 40 votes. 77 members have voted. There were one spoiled ballot paper, and Mr. Asai Gulayev is accordingly elected vice chair. Congratulations. And then we move on to the result of the election of the chair of the General Committee on Political Affairs and Security. Mrs. Åsa Lindestam from Sweden got 36 votes. Mr. Makis Voridis from Greece got 40 votes. 77 members voted here also, and there were one spoiled ballot paper, and Mr. Makis Voridis is accordingly elected chair. Congratulations.
I will start by congratulate the new committee, and I hope you will do a very successful job in the next session. I have enjoyed every minute of this, and I really like to be sitting on here, but I'm sorry, I will step down now. And I will thank you all. It has been a very good and interesting discussion, and I really love this, and I hope you will put a lot of amendments and supplementary items to this committee. Thank you very much for this session. And this is the end. Thank you.